Welcome back. What's in a word? In the news business, where terminology matters quite a bit, particularly if you're Turkish or Armenian and the word is genocide. Turkey's been in the news recently, not only over its fight with Kurdish forces and the implications that has on the Iraq War, but also over a vote that recently took place in a committee of the U.S. Congress, in which American lawmakers called the mass killings of Armenian Turks between 1915 and 1917 a case of genocide. The Listening Post's Sinead O'Shea now on the vote, the response it set off within Turkey, and the law that often prevents Turkish news media from criticizing their own country.
About a century ago, 1.5 million Armenians died during a war with the Turks.
Deaths of 1.5 million Armenians at the hands of the Turks in 1915.
The potential rifts between the U.S. and Turkey could be serious.
It is difficult enough for the news media to cover what is happening today without having to go back almost 100 years to decide whether what happened in Turkey was genocide.
Armenians were first vilified as a suspect minority, and then under the guise of a so-called deportation program, they were moved from their homes and villages, where if they didn't die of starvation and disease, they were massacred at the end of 1916.
The Turkish version would say that what happened were unfortunate slayings, killings, atrocities that happen any time during a war, certainly during a major war like the First World War. And that there is nothing really over and above the fact that this just happened, and it actually happened as much to Turks who died as it did to Armenians.
When a committee of the US Congress recently voted to call the deaths of up to 1.5 million Armenians at the hands of Turks in World War I a case of genocide, media on all sides of the story reacted. Armenians have been trying for decades to have the world call it a case of genocide. But Turkey is a powerful country, strategically important to the West, and has been since the days of the Roman Empire. That has affected how the issue is seen in Washington and reported in the West.
The American media has really explored this issue mainly from the point of view of the national security interests of the United States. Turkey is a very, very important corridor, a supply route for US supplies for the US military in Iraq. About 70% of, for example, US supplies go through Turkey.
That's how President Bush put it in front of the news cameras. Rather than engage with the genocide debate itself, he simply said the congressional vote jeopardized American interests.
And its passage would do great harm to our relations with a key ally in NATO and in the global war on terror.
Turks reacted angrily to what the Congressional Committee was saying about their history, both on the streets and in Parliament, instantly threatening to ban US aircraft from using Turkish airspace to enter Iraq. The Turks also declared that their own forces would go into Iraq to take on Kurdish fighters, ignoring the Bush administration's pleas to stay out. The media in Turkey was critical of the vote in the US, but it's difficult to know what they really think of the genocide debate. Turkey has a law, Article 301, which makes it a crime to insult Turkishness, and accusing the state that Ataturk built of genocide amounts to a breach of that law.
Her şeyden önce bu madde hukuki açıdan sorunlu.
It is a very problematic article in terms of law. It is very ambiguous. It involves the notion of insulting Turkishness. This automatically necessitates the practice of self-censorship for all writers and those that work in the media industry. I see this as kind of like the sword of Damocles overshadowing thought. You can never freely express yourself as the sword constantly swings overhead.
Hiçbir zaman özgür bir şekilde kendinizi ifade edemiyorsunuz.
Tens upon tens of Turkish and Armenian Turkish journalists and university academics have been taken to court in Turkey is because of this infamous Article 301 of the Turkish Criminal Code, which says that anybody who so much as mentions the Armenian genocide is insulting Turkishness or the Turkish identity.
One of the best-known journalists prosecuted under 301 was the late Hrant Dink, an Armenian Turk who wrote that the genocide was a part of Turkish history. Earlier this year, Dink was shot and killed by a young Turkish nationalist, an event that stunned Turkey and brought tens of thousands out onto the street in protest. Article 301 is not just used against journalists. Orhan Pamuk is Turkey's best-known novelist and won the 2006 Nobel Prize for Literature. In 2005, Pamuk discussed the Armenian issue in a Swiss newspaper. He didn't even call it a genocide, but was still charged under 301 and attacked on his way into court. Turkish courts have used Article 301 to temporarily shut down access to YouTube when videos were posted that judges said violated the law. But this hasn't stopped Armenians from putting up more material relating to this issue. Outside Turkey, the kind of language news organisations are using to describe what happened to Armenians in World War I has changed too.
Within the media, the Washington Post, for example, has been very pro-Turkish, but then the Washington Post has been pro-Turkish for a long time. I believe the New York Times has been more outspoken on the Armenian issue. In fact, until a few years ago, they themselves would refuse to use the word genocide to describe the events of 1915. But they passed an editorial policy whereby they would use that term.
If you look now at what's happening in the last 5, 6, 7 years maybe, a lot of those newspapers, certainly in the United States, have had decisions on the editorial board level to remove the word alleged and just say the Armenian genocide, because they have come to realize it's time to stop fuffing about and calling it alleged and call a spade a spade.
The fact of the Armenian genocide is not simply about the events of 1915. It's also about the denial of those facts until the recent times. Modern day Turkish politicians, educators, university professors, diplomats, journalists, they're all culpable of being part of this lie.
Turkey's president recently said Article 301 should be changed, but critics of the law, like Orhan Pamuk, say they have heard that before. And as long as Article 301 remains on the books, the Turkish media will be very careful when it comes to reporting on what is happening in their country today or what happened in the past.
More Global Village Voices now on Turkey and the news media.
It is justifiable that people stopped discussing whether it was a genocide or not in Turkey, because especially Turkish youth is tired of feeling the guilt of this massacre, feeling the pressure of this massacre in their shoulders, because that was done by Ottoman Empire actually, not by Turkish Republic.
It kind of puts pressure on Turkey, who has a very intimate relationship with America, to approach its own past through this prism and accept that this word does have some bearing, at least outside of the country, and therefore not dismiss it out of hand, and maybe give some kudos to those people within Turkey who already do use the, as they like to put it, the G word.
Why is it that Ankara saw the necessity of advocating the terminology genocide when applied, and rightly so, to what happened in the Balkans, in Bosnia, for instance, and avoid the same terminology to what happened in its own territories?
Finally, there are a lot of bands that are using YouTube, MySpace, and social networking sites to post some clever videos and get their music out there. But the problem can be that the video box on some of those sites is rather small, and when you enlarge it, the image resolution can suffer. Well, here's a band, Electric Eel Shock, that has found a way to take the YouTube effect and multiply it by a factor of 4. It's our Internet Video of the Week. We'll see you next time at The Listening Post. The trick is to start the 4 YouTube boxes at the right time. And if you get it right, they all come together.
Give me something.